Hello, Rob here from the Flanagan Homestead and East Fork Christmas Tree Farms. I just got done with my visit with Glen Thornton. He allowed me to come out to the farm and just compare notes and talk today. He is the largest grower in Clark County, the largest U-cut grower in Clark County. He sells about 5,000 U-cut Christmas trees a year. He does really well. And he was nice enough to bring me out there. But the single thing that stood out the most different, because we do most of the things the same, we've both been farming for a long time. He's been doing it a lot longer than I have. But, we have most of the same practices. But the thing that I noticed most different was the spacing of his trees. And I'm not talking about just how you line up the rows, and I'll show you some video here in just a minute on how he actually starts another tree before the previous tree is ready to harvest. Okay, but generally spacing of a Christmas trees are, if you're doing it tight, is 5 by 5 rows, and that's what Glen does. He wants to get the most per tree that he can, and he pulls a chain, and he's got actually a cable. He's got black tape every 5 feet, so he stretches that tape really tight, and he just starts planting trees right on that cable, and he pulls it tight, and his rows are nice and straight, and he's really proud of his straight rows. But 5 by 5, you get about 1,700 trees per acre, which is about the most you can get. 5.5 feet by 5.5 feet, which a lot of growers are doing, you get approximately 1,400 trees per acre. So you're losing 300 trees, but you got a little bit more space to work and a little bit more space for the trees to grow wider. Glen shears his trees pretty tight, which is not a bad thing, but then, when you're doing 5 by 5s, you have that same room. And if you do 6 by 6, which some people are doing, you only get about 1,200 trees per acre. So that's 500 less than the 5 by 5. But there are some advantages to that as far as having room. I will say I've watched some of you other growers that have Christmas tree videos going on out there, and I see some trees planted way far apart, what appears to me to be way far apart, and I was like, wow, they're giving up a lot of space. They must have a lot of land, or they don't need to get that many in there, or you think they need room. But if you have more than 6 feet by 6 feet, you're wider than the kind of the expected spacing. Our trees, when we started, we did 6 feet apart one way and 5 or 5.5 the other way. In the 6 feet apart row, we figured being a U-cut, it's always wet out here in November, December, so when the U-cut people are walking through, they're not going to be brushing up against the trees all the time, getting wet. Plus the 6 foot row way, we could drive our quad with spraying equipment, or if we ever get the small Christmas tree tractor, it's easier to drive that way to do the spraying and whatnot. So we have 6 by 5.5, but the trees that we planted most recently, we're doing those tighter and trying to get more trees per acreage. But what I wanted to really talk about, and the thing that I noticed what was really different, is Glen will plant a tree, and when it gets about 4 or 5 feet tall, it's not unusual for him to have another tree planted only a few feet away. So if the tree is going to get 4 feet wide total on the bottom, or 3.5, so it's going to be sticking out a couple feet, he'll plant another tree just a couple feet from the trunk of this tree, and so the branches will be coming down here, and the small tree will be right there. And the advantage that he gets out of that is Nobles and Nordmans are the #1 tree. Those are the trees that we grow the most here, and they're slow starters. So what he does is he'll plant a few years before this one's going to come out, and the Nobles and Nordmans might still only be 2 feet tall after 3 years, and the other tree is getting big and ready to harvest, and they're starting to touch each other, but then he knows this big one's going to be harvested out, and instead of being like me, where I'm planting a tree now to restart the cycle, he's already got a tree that's 2 or 3 years old. It's got its roots established, which both the Nobles and Nordmans are slow starters, and then it's ready to take off, and so right when it's ready to take off, the other one's gone, and he's already rolling, and so he can get more trees in and through his cycles than I can the way I'm doing it. So I'm going to show you some video on what that looks like on his farm, and this is definitely something that Barry and I will be discussing about doing on our Christmas tree farm. Is this something that we want to look at? So we have right here a super young tree, a big tree that's market size, another small tree. So on my farm, we tend to wait till the tree is gone and then plant another one, but it looks like you have the strategy of letting the seedlings get their roots established, get started, and then this one's going to go out, so they're already started. Is that typical of what you do here?
for sure, it takes 7 to plus years to grow a noble fir. So if you start every year with a bare ground, it's going to take you 7 years at least. But by planting after the tree is getting a good size on it, then this tree right here has been in the ground 3 years. So,
Yeah, and it's still not big enough to interfere with the other one yet,
look at this one.
but it's getting established.
A lot of these have been in the ground only 3 years, but look what I got here.
Yeah.
I'm going to take this tree out. Well, next year I'm going to have two. This tree's going to be here.
Yep. So instead of, on my farm, I'm going to have a tiny little seedling sitting there. On your farm, you've got a 3-year-old tree ready to go.
Well, but if I do it next year, I got 4 years already.
Yep.
Now this tree is going to be up here. There's not quite 5. There's 6 feet. I'm gonna have another tree here in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, you're going to have a marketable tree in less than half the time.
I'm growing a tree instead of 7 years. I'm growing it in 4 years.
And are you doing that with every variety of tree?
As much as I can. Now, Doug fir is different. I pretty much don't do that with Doug fir because they grow so fast. And I wouldn't plant a Doug fir against a tree like this. Now, this tree should go this year.
Yeah. So how far apart are your rows?
5 feet.
5 feet.
60 inches.
Okay.
And my trees originally is 5 feet on row. 5 by 5. You get 1,700 trees plus.
1,700 trees an acre at 5 by 5.
Now, if you do a 5.5 by 5.5, you're going to cut it down to around 1,300.
1,350, I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're at on our
A
farm.
little multiple.
Our newer section that we're planting closer than we originally did.
Well, but the trees themselves, like when I take this tree out here, these 2 trees are a little close. But if I take this tree out here, that's pretty close to 5 feet.
Yep.
And this one here, probably close, about 5 feet. Plus or minus a few.
Thanks for joining me on the Flanagan Homestead, where Christmas trees are my business, teaching and cleaning horticulture is my job, and outdoor projects are my passion.